Hi, good morning. Thanks for stopping by early, really appreciate it. I'm going to use the mic because there's a couple more people and the room is slightly bigger. Do I need to start this? Okay. I can't see the monitor, so I'm just going to pivot between you guys and the screen. So I was asked to switch to this stream, which is big screen gaming, which is actually not what we used to do, but it's a fit because we're doing it now, and what that means and why and how that happened. Now we are there. I'm going to explain you in the next 15 minutes, and hopefully there's something there that you find interesting. Magic Moments. Paladin is a studio of about 60 people. We've been around since 14 years. We're now scratching on 60, as I said. We're fully self-funded, never got a single dollar of investment in, organically grown. We're exclusively developing on Unity. Yay. We have our own proprietary backend tech, which we use for asynchronous multiplayer games on mobile as well. 360 odd pipeline. We're basically doing everything in-house except sound and music that we outsource. For the last about 10 years, we're doing mobile, and about 6 years, we're mobile free-to-play. Mobile first, I would say, because some of our own IP is actually out there. One title called Momonga is actually, I think, on everything except microwaves and fridges, including Wii and Xbox and all kinds of fun stuff. That we don't do ourselves, though. We licensed it out, and it's not making us rich, but it's fun. We're usually the prime business model for the studio until now is co-development. So we work with publishers. Some of the really cool partners we've been lucky and honored to work with: Bandai, Congregate, Tapstar, Kilu, Spill, Plugin Digital, and the list goes on. And that's what we did, and that's what we do. So I wanted to talk very briefly, because we don't have a lot of time, about some of the trends that we as a mobile slash console PC studio are seeing in the market. And I'm just going to throw those out there, and we can talk about it afterwards. There's obviously a lot more beyond the list that you see there. So one of the things that we're seeing, that we're having a close eye on, is cross-platform play. xCloud from Microsoft. There's Fortnite, which is also on everything. I think they are on microwaves by now, probably. 5G, big word, big thing. I honestly don't know too much about it at this point, what it means, but it is something that we're watching. It will increase fidelity on the streaming side, cheaper devices. That's one thing that might happen. The actual OEMs focusing on content, because they now have a platform to do that, much easier. Crypto games, I know that's also a very big word, but there's something there that's extremely interesting. One of my friends is in that business now in Canada, and it is quite mind-blowing what you can do there. It's not something that we do right now at the moment, but we're watching it. We actually got a request in for something to work on in that space as a work for hire on a blockchain-based game. More big PC games coming to mobile. Diablo, Call of Duty. That's with real good quality, full-blown experience transported onto mobile, and by now it actually looks good and it plays reasonably well. That is something that's a little bit scary for the smaller independent studios, because you're going up against Call of Duty. Wow, if you want to make a shooter on mobile right now, I think that's a scary thought. AR games, and I specifically didn't mention VR, because I don't believe in it yet, personally. AR is a cool thing, though. There's a handful of concepts and a handful of games out there in the market already that utilize that. I'm personally a big fan of Jurassic World Alive. That AR component is super fun to play with my nieces and nephews. So there's something there as technology develops that should be watched on. And the other thing, more on the business side, that we are seeing is that the deal sizes are going up on the upper end and going down on the lower end. So, typically, the last 2-3 years ago, the average deal maybe was around $500,000, maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit more, but that was a good mark for like an independent co-development to shoot for. That's changing quite a lot. There's a bunch of stuff on the very low end, 50 grand for a development, and then there's quite a bit of space up there that goes way beyond 2 million at the moment. That's something we're seeing, and that's new. In essence, it's not getting even easier. Even now, we've been growing about 50% year on year over the last 3-4 years. We're 60 people now. That does not make it easier. If you have to manage on a cash flow basis and you are independent, that certainly is a challenge. Co-development at the higher levels of projects is getting a lot more competitive. That's one of the things that we've been seeing over the last year. If you want to get one of these big projects, it is not getting easier. Partly because there's been a ton of M&A activity. A lot of the bigger publishers and organizations grabbed some of the studios, anywhere between the 20 to 40, 50 people size. That has an impact on what's out there in terms of co-dev opportunities. And one thing that we really realized, also partly by running our own live ops now with our game called Stormbound. Who here heard about Stormbound? You all got to check it out in the App Store. It's awesome. It's a synchronous multiplayer game, card battler. Very, very cool. So we're running this since about the beginning of this year on our own again. We co-developed it with Congregate, and now we're trying to figure out how to really do live ops on our own. One thing we realized is that even at our size, doing that is extremely challenging, and the amount of resources it takes, not just money, but also people and structure and organization, is really challenging to pull off yourself. And I do believe that is, if you want to play in the big leagues, and especially if your aspiration is to create a hit title in mobile free-to-play, you need a partner, unless you have a lot of money lying around somewhere. How about this new stuff? Everybody talks about it since quite a while. Stadia, Arcade, these subscription services. We now have pricing, which is awesome. I think that's cool. Already signed up for both of them. Why not? $5 a month. That's really an impulse purchase, which is great. But what about this? Like, what does this mean for somebody like us as a developer and a studio? So what I wanted to figure out is, what does subscription business mean, right? Because it's a great word, it's nice to say, but what does it mean? Well, let's look at some of the stuff that's already out there. So we got Disney Plus, just signed up for that because it was a month free, yay. Binge watch Star Wars and everything around it. And I might actually keep it, it's priced really well. Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, all the pundits that have been around since quite a while. What are they doing? Well, they have about 1 billion users, which is not too bad. They're making about $30 billion a year. That's actually less and also more than I expected before I started looking into it. If you compare it to what our industry is doing, which we're going to do in a second, there's some interesting parallels there. And that is something I was very surprised of. They have about a $26 ARPU. Netflix does. How does this work? Well, I guess somebody signs up, somebody cancels. So that's the average that a paying user generates for them. how does this compare? Well, if you look at the games industry, the gaming networks, that's actually in the definition of Statista that I pulled here, that is subscriptions. So that is a smaller part of the business right now. I'm going to activate the laser, because I can. Is that the laser? That's the laser, yes. So we're looking at 2019. Mobile does about $1 billion. Download games, which is, you know, the Steams and all the other PC stuff and console stuff, a little bit more than that. We got online games, about 700, and we got the subscription, the networks was about 80. What I don't know, and I'm trying to figure out, is if that number here for mobile actually includes the subscriptions and VIP plans and all these business models that are actually reoccurring revenue already in it, which I think it does, and it doesn't put it in here. If that's the case, then that number should really change, and this one should too, if we roll it into that, because with these two major services offering subscriptions, I do believe that's something that will change these numbers. Right. So that's that. In terms of the users, you know, there's obviously a lot more that deal with games than streaming TV in this case, but it's interesting to see that mobile is about right there where the streaming services are in terms of users. If we're looking at the revenue of 30 billion, that obviously pales compared to what you guys do or what we do. Not saying that we're making 50 billion with Paladin, but hey, that'd be nice. So the mobile industry is nearly twice of what these services do at the moment. And it's still growing quite nicely. I think anything that goes 5 years out is a very hard guess to make, but I'm sure we can be pretty confident that next year is going to be seeing and growth in this industry as well. But if you look at that you know, the download games and the online games together, that's about the size of what Netflix and co are doing. So it's a nice chunk of the market. Looking at the ARPU is actually a little even more interesting, and if you see that, again, we have the subscription here, that layer, Xbox Live and PlayStation and Nintendo. The ARPU is actually fairly similar to what Netflix is doing. Now, what I'm wondering is the actual ARPU for the game subscription services on mobile going to top that? Because if you just look at mobile, that's obviously a lot higher, nearly twice that, but it's going down. So if we look at this in like 2 years or so, I think we're going to either have a very positive or some kind of surprise for sure. Yeah. How could this grow? Well, Netflix is really happy, I think, with what they're doing. I'm not sure what kind of profit they're turning, but obviously their revenue about quadrupled since 2012. They're at about 5 billion right now per quarter, which is massive. I think that's a really good business. So this whole idea of subscription doesn't seem like a bad one to me, and I get why Apple and Google are looking into it, right? Makes sense. What does this mean, though, for us? Well, one way to answer that question is try making premium content, right? Instead of free-to-play, subscription requires a different type of content. You're not so much focused on just the science of it, the numbers, the algorithms, and the actual monetization scheme that you need to have if you do free-to-play. But I think there's a different focus on these games. So luckily, or interestingly, we had the opportunity about 2 years ago to start thinking about and start developing a premium console game. That's that's interesting, because that's not who we are. So we were very grateful to have that opportunity. I mean, if you guys, who's a mobile developer, mobile studio here? Oh, that's very little. But usually if you talk to people in the mobile industry, there is an aspiration of making bigger stuff. There's big mobile games out there that make billions and have hundreds of millions of users. But I think in a lot of developers, games developers, the aspiration is to do something that is on a big screen. We've seen that too. So there was a lot of enthusiasm around it. It was really interesting to see. And we said, okay, there's lots of stuff going on. Let's give this a try. When we started this, subscription mobile was not really a thing. There was rumors about it, but nothing concrete that we know now is going to happen. This experience over the last 2 years, not a walk in the park. If you're a mobile developer, you two guys, and you think about doing this, it's not easy. There is a big difference between developing free-to-play and developing a premium game for a console or a PC. I personally do think that there's a lot more focus on level design as just picking one element out of it. I know that our team right now, it's about 30 people, 32 people on the console game, and I do believe we have, I stopped counting, 6 or 7 level designers. That's nuts. That's about 7 times more than, or 5 times more that we had on any of the previous mobile games, which, were not huge, but also not very small, and some of them were focused on the actual level design, like Galaga, very interesting. There are way more iterations in general. There's the bigger team, that's one of the big findings, the bigger team did not scale from our previous setup. We've been working in these small cells that have all functions of development integrated, and we thought, okay, let's just throw a couple more people on that for level design, for programming. Didn't work. We basically learned a very hard lesson that we broke up the project into different teams again, and now have an overhead structure above that that manages on a project level. Very different setup in working with publishing partners. Really affected the way we plan and work. And a lot of other things. If you're interested, talk to me afterwards or get in touch. There's been some really interesting learnings on that one. But the benefits are that we're working on a premium game. I do believe there's transferable design and production skills applying to subscription-based games. Which is very interesting. We're very happy about that, and that is something for any kind of studio at any kind of stage. We now know going through this process how we need to scale up further from here if we choose to do it. Right. Where does the path lead us in 2020? There's basically 2 main opportunities to explore. One of them is free-to-play mobile. We're going to stick with this at least for a while because we do have some interesting opportunities there as a studio. It's what we do since about 10 years, so we shouldn't just ditch it. But we're really looking at this premium cross-platform track as well, and try to figure out if that is the way for us to go as a studio, as a team, as a business as well. I do believe there's really cool opportunities in both areas, but we want to take some time to figure it out. One more learning though, and that is really important. That is something that has been building in Paladin over the years, as we typically run 3 to 4 projects at any given time. We are at the size now where we truly believe that we have to make a choice. It is already very tricky having a console team and a bunch of mobile free-to-play teams on different sides of the studio. There's a magnet effect that is drawing people to, whatever is the coolest at the moment, and that is very hard to manage. But that's not the only reason. It's also the business side of things, the business model, trying to figure out how to run two completely different things at the same time is a huge challenge. And I strongly believe in focus that is required to actually get the success that we want. So I think in 2020, by the end of it, we're going to have to make a decision of where we're going to go. Interesting times. Yeah, I think I'm at 0. So thank you very much for listening to my ramblings. Please come up to me afterwards. I'm going to be around the next 2 days if you have any questions and want to know more of what the pitfalls are of making this type of content. Yeah, thank you so much.
We do have time for questions if anyone has any.
Questions. Any questions? No questions.
No questions?
You sure? All right.
Okay.
Good.
Anyway, big round of applause for Kay.
Wait.
Oh,
question.
There is a question. Can we?
Yeah, good question. So I have to be honest and say I don't know. The reason for that is that a lot of times the free-to-play developments that we did over the last years, we did with big partners that had a lot of that stuff covered on their end. So we're taking our baby steps and running this ourselves. With the live game that we basically took over fully. There is a ton of really good solutions, services out there. I don't want to point a single one out because I can't do that at this point in time. But one of the things that we're doing right now is putting a lot of research into this because we're actually looking at designing a high ARPU free-to-play mobile game based on some of the stuff we did. It takes a bunch of time and it's a full-time job. So I would say the best advice I can give, get somebody to deal with it. Just that. Yeah. You're welcome. Anything else? All right.
No.
Back to Netflix, I guess.
So, you're here to see our unannounced project, but I guess I can tell the title now. So the title is, and oh my god, so basically I'll just tell you the story right now. So what's gonna happen is, what is amazing is that, and of course, like we can't tell any of that usually, but now that you're here, it's great. I haven't been able to tell anyone this, so I'm like super excited. I don't think I'm supposed to even tell you about it, for it's gonna be absolutely amazing. Let's get you on board.